To begin with, the federal trial court system is known as the federal district courts. And there are many, many district courts throughout the United States and its territories, such as Puerto Rico and Guam. And there's at least one federal district court in every state. So the district court is where the trial would happen. And then if you want to appeal the district court's decision, you go to an appeals court, which in the federal system is known as the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals or the Federal Court of Appeals. And this is an appeal you get as a matter of right. If you lose the trial, you can always go to an appeal, and there are 12 federal appeals courts that hear cases from around the country. Now, if a party then loses in the federal appeals court, you can appeal that to the U.S. Supreme Court. But unlike the appeals court, where you have an appeal as a matter of right, the appeals to the U.S. Supreme Court are purely discretionary on the part of the court. You have to file what's called a writ of certiorari, a petition to the court, and tell the court why you think your case deserves to be heard. And there are many thousands of cases that are filed, petitions that are filed in the U.S. Supreme Court every year. And these days, they only hear 100 or fewer of those cases. So most petitions that are filed are turned down. And the idea is that as between the two parties, the initial trial plus one appeal is good enough to do justice. And the only reason the U.S. Supreme Court agrees to hear a case is not that they think that the appeals court necessarily got something wrong, but because it's important for the U.S. Supreme Court to step into a particular case in order to set a broader precedent for the country in that particular area. And so it's not good enough just to say, I disagree with what the federal appeals court said. You have to provide an additional justification for why the Supreme Court should grant certiorari and agree to hear the case. And if the Supreme Court agrees to hear the case, of course, and renders its decision, then we're done. There are also some specialized federal courts that hear cases involving particular subjects. There are federal tax courts, there's bankruptcy courts, and things like that. And those are subject specific. But most federal district courts are geographically based.